In the heart of Dublin's underworld, a tale of violence, betrayal, and redemption unfolded, forever changing the lives of those involved and exposing the dark underbelly of Ireland's criminal landscape. On a seemingly ordinary Saturday afternoon in April 2004, the calm outside Cloverhill Prison in Clondalkin was shattered by the sharp crack of gunfire. Jonathan O'Reilly, a figure known in Dublin's criminal circles, sat unsuspecting in the passenger seat of a parked BMW. Little did he know that these moments would be his last. O'Reilly's story began years earlier in the rough streets of West Dublin. Born into a world where crime often seemed the only way out, he quickly rose through the ranks of local gangs. By his early 20s, O'Reilly had become a key player in the area's drug trade, his name whispered with a mix of fear and respect in the shadowy corners of pubs and back alleys. But O'Reilly's ascent came at a cost. His criminal activities had not gone unnoticed by law enforcement, and he found himself in and out of prison. Each stint behind bars only seemed to harden his resolve and deepen his connections in the criminal underworld. Just a year before that fateful April day, O'Reilly had walked out of Cloverhill Prison, having served part of a 5-year sentence for drug offences. To many, it might have seemed a chance for a fresh start, an opportunity to leave behind the dangerous life he'd been leading. But the lure of easy money and the thrill of power proved too strong to resist. O'Reilly's return to his old haunts was marked by a series of violent incidents. One particularly brutal episode stood out in the minds of those who knew him. At a christening party in a local Clondalkin pub, O'Reilly, then just 16, had threatened a man on crutches, promising to break his other leg. When bystanders tried to intervene, the situation escalated rapidly. Fists flew, a granite slab was wielded as a weapon, and by the end, several people lay injured, their faces bloodied and bones broken. This incident was just one of many that cemented O'Reilly's reputation as a man not to be crossed. But in the world he inhabited, such a reputation was a double-edged sword. It brought respect and fear, but also made him a target for rival gangs and ambitious up-and-comers looking to make a name for themselves. As O'Reilly sat in the BMW that April afternoon, waiting while the driver visited a friend inside the prison, he was unaware that his past was about to catch up with him in the most brutal way imaginable. The roar of a high-powered motorcycle approaching the car barely registered in his mind before 2 helmeted figures appeared alongside the vehicle. In a flash, one of the riders dismounted, the gun already in hand. The next few seconds seemed to stretch into an eternity as 3 shots rang out, shattering the car window and finding their mark in O'Reilly's upper body. As quickly as they had appeared, the assailants were gone, leaving behind a scene of chaos and tragedy. The murder sent shockwaves through Dublin's criminal underworld. It was a bold move, carried out in broad daylight and with a level of planning that suggested this was no random act of violence. As police began their investigation, rumors swirled about who might be behind the killing. Unbeknownst to the authorities at the time, the answers they sought lay in an isolated cottage in Finglas, where the killers had retreated following their brutal act. Thomas Hinchon and Brian Kenny, the men responsible for O'Reilly's death, believed they had executed the perfect crime. But their celebration was about to be cut short by an unexpected source. Joey O'Callaghan, a teenager staying at the cottage, found himself unwittingly drawn into the aftermath of the murder. Forced by the killers to help dispose of evidence, O'Callaghan was suddenly faced with a life-altering decision. The young man, who had been groomed into the criminal life from the tender age of 12, saw a chance to break free from the cycle of violence and exploitation that had defined his existence. O'Callaghan's journey into Dublin's criminal underworld had begun innocently enough. At 12, he had talked his way into a job on a local milk float, seeing it as a chance to earn some pocket money. Little did he know that the float's owner, Brian Kenny, was using the business as a cover for his drug-dealing operations. Over the next few years, Kenny systematically groomed O'Callaghan, drawing him deeper into a world of crime and violence. The young boy was forced to sell heroin, introduced to notorious gang bosses like Marlowe Highland, and subjected to relentless physical, psychological, and even sexual abuse at Kenny's hands. Now, at 19, O'Callaghan saw a chance to escape this life of fear and violence. Despite the very real threat to his life and the lives of his family members, he made the courageous decision to go to the authorities. What followed was one of the largest police operations in recent Dublin history. Guided by O'Callaghan's information, a team of 30 armed officers descended on the area. The young informant led them to a veritable treasure trove of criminal assets: guns hidden under grass, drugs and money buried in makeshift graves, even stolen boats and jet skis. By the end of the operation, authorities had seized approximately €400,000 worth of cash and drugs, dealing a significant blow to the local criminal network. But for O'Callaghan, this was just the beginning of a long and dangerous journey. Over the next year, O'Callaghan worked with prosecutors to build a case against Hinchon and Kenny. His testimony would prove crucial in bringing the killers to justice, but it came at a great personal cost. At just 19, O'Callaghan became the youngest person ever to enter Ireland's witness protection program, forced to leave behind everything and everyone he had ever known. The trial of Hinchon and Kenny in July 2005 was a tense affair. As O'Callaghan took the stand, he faced not only the men he was testifying against, but also the weight of years of abuse and manipulation. His courage in the face of such adversity was remarkable, and his testimony proved damning. In the end, both Hinchon and Kenny were found guilty of O'Reilly's murder and sentenced to life in prison. The judge, in delivering the verdict, described the killing as cold, calculated, and premeditated, a slaying of a young man as can be imagined. But the story didn't end with the conviction. For O'Callaghan, life in witness protection proved to be a different kind of prison. Constantly looking over his shoulder, unable to form lasting relationships or put down roots, he struggled to build a new life free from the shadows of his past. Meanwhile, behind bars, Kenny and Hinchon showed no remorse for their actions. Reports suggested that both men continued to try and run their criminal operations from inside prison, their influence in Dublin's underworld apparently undiminished by their incarceration. Kenny, in particular, proved to be a master manipulator even behind bars. Despite his violent past and the brutality of his crimes, he managed to convince a parole board of his reformation after serving just 16 years of his life sentence. This decision came as a shock to many, not least O'Callaghan, who had received multiple threat-to-life warnings related to Kenny. Kenny's time on parole was marked by controversy. Transferred to an open prison, he enjoyed a surprisingly relaxed regime, including regular family outings and shopping trips. These freedoms came despite impassioned pleas from O'Callaghan to restrict Kenny's movements, pleas that fell on deaf ears as prison authorities deemed Kenny a low-risk prisoner. The true nature of Kenny's reformation became apparent during the Christmas period of 2021. Allowed out for the holidays, Kenny reportedly became intoxicated, a clear violation of his parole terms. Despite this, he managed to conceal his transgression from prison authorities and was granted another temporary release shortly after. However, Kenny's luck finally ran out in February 2022. Involved in a drug-related incident at the prison, his parole was revoked, and he was returned to a maximum security facility to continue serving his life sentence. Once again, he found himself sharing a prison with his former partner in crime, Hinchon. The saga of O'Reilly, Kenny, Hinchon, and O'Callaghan shed a harsh light on the realities of Dublin's criminal underworld. It exposed a world where violence begets violence, where young lives are twisted and exploited by those meant to protect them, and where the line between criminal and law enforcement can sometimes blur. For O'Callaghan, the story serves as a testament to the power of individual courage in the face of overwhelming odds. His decision to break free from the cycle of crime and violence despite the personal cost stands as a beacon of hope in an otherwise dark tale. The impact of this case reached far beyond the individuals directly involved. It sparked debates about the effectiveness of Ireland's witness protection program, the rehabilitation of violent offenders, and the ongoing challenges faced by law enforcement in combating organized crime. In the years following the trial, various reforms were proposed and implemented in Ireland's criminal justice system. These included enhanced protections for witnesses, stricter parole guidelines for violent offenders, and increased resources for combating organized crime. Yet, despite these efforts, the shadows cast by Dublin's criminal underworld continue to loom large. The story of O'Reilly, Kenny, Hinchon, and O'Callaghan serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of organized crime and the long, difficult road to justice. As for the key players in this drama, their fates diverged dramatically. O'Reilly's life was cut short in a brutal act of violence, leaving behind a young son who would grow up without a father. Kenny and Hinchon, the perpetrators of this violence, found themselves confined to the narrow world of prison, their dreams of criminal empire building reduced to whispered conversations in exercise yards and mess halls. And O'Callaghan, the young man whose testimony brought down these hardened criminals, continues to live a life shaped by his courageous decision. While the witness protection program offered him safety, it also imposed a kind of exile, separating him from his past and forcing him to forge a new identity in unfamiliar surroundings. That's our video for today. Like and subscribe for our future videos, and I will see you next time. Thank you.